after us. And they many times they already took Jews from the place for work, for no reason, just to go and do things, whatever they chose to do, that they wanted them to do.
Yes.
So it was known.
Forced labour.
Yes. Yeah, you have to help me out with the English.
Mm.
Forced labor, right.
What happened when you got home?
When I got home, everybody was just surprised. I mean, as I walked through, everybody felt terribly sorry for me. I could see that they all, I didn't know that my parents are not home.
Who was remaining?
Everybody just looked, not the Jews, the non-Jews.
No.
They all looked and they all talked and they all, they all felt sorry for me. Really, when I think back, they're and talking to each other. That was all they felt sorry.
They weren't hostile.
No. Hostile, you mean?
Towards you as a Jew.
No, they were really
sympathetic.
And only when I got home in this empty house, and I was just running. We had a cellar and we had a boyden and Ravenna. Everywhere.
Had your parents left any notes to indicate what had happened, where they were being taken?
No, they left and the house was left free, nothing. I mean, and only then the gendarmerie, they were called police. They came and they took me, but also hostile, and they were very nice to me and understanding, and they took me to the ghetto, to my parents. And I must say that I was quite happy. I was quite happy to be with my parents, even if it was the ghetto, but to be together.
Was it a closed or an open ghetto?
Closed.
And what details do you recall on daily life in the ghetto as regarding food and schooling, if any?
We lived very close-knit. I mean, we had very little space and cooking, very few families together, but we still had Yiddish teaching. We learned, we say Hebrew, but Cheder was there, and actually we knew that it's only in between time that they're going to be taken from there, they're going to take us. It's only for a while we are going to live like that. And then they will take us to paradise, kind of. But then they're taking us to, it will be a better place. Because this is small now, no complaints, and they'll take us to a better place.
Where did you live, in a room? Or?
Now, yes. Then, after 3 weeks, my brother also arrived from the other bunker. But by then, I mean, they knew how many people are not there registered, and that they didn't take them to the ghetto. So they looked for those bunkers. Since once they found one bunker, we knew that they'll find others, and they did. After 2 weeks or 3 weeks, Yossi also arrived. The difference was only then that they shaved their hair already in the ghetto. That was the punishment.
For hiding?
For hiding. When I came, there was no punishment. I really didn't get any punishment. I would say on the contrary, they were even sympathetic. Again, I was young. I think yes.
Who was in charge of the ghetto? The Hungarians?
Yes. I thought you meant now from us, among us, who was, I would
Because it's interesting that you mentioned that on the one hand that the Hungarians were terribly anti-Semitic, and yet in your particular case here, you have recollections of them being sympathetic to you
Yes, they didn't beat me up.
when you were in the ghetto.
Yes, like they beat up my brother. They beat him up, they shaved his hair. I didn't get that. That's because I was...
How did food come into the ghetto if it was a closed
I was
ghetto?
12 years, 13 years. Pardon?
How did food come into the ghetto?
I really don't know. I don't
You
remember.
have recollections of
We
being
had-
constantly hungry?
We took with us, no, we could take with us food. How much, I don't know. I only know that we ate very well at home before we left, because before even I went to the bunker, because I remember we used to have geese and chickens and wat geschochten, you know, because not for to leave, and you know, we had parties, you know, before we
Yes.
were taken away, because they knew already, my parents, they knew we are going to leave,
Yes.
and we also could take food with them to the ghetto, probably a certain amount.
Of course, but
So
food, but that wouldn't have lasted you for terribly long.
No, but we were not very long in the ghetto.
How long were you in
I
the ghetto?
think we were only a couple of months in the ghetto. It's terrible because I remember that we were Pesach. You see, now it's 44. That was 43. Pesach I remember in Auschwitz. But I do not remember the dates when we were taken off. How and when, I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll do it stepwise.
But it doesn't help because this I try to...
Okay, we're talking Pesach 44 already.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't remember the time in the time, how long we were in the ghetto, or how long even at home, the terrible years, the hard years, wasn't terrible, but the hard years and parents sending off their children not to get home, that started 43, 42. But I don't...
All right, what recollections do you have whilst in the ghetto of expulsions from the ghetto, random shootings, cruelty?
In the
This
ghetto?
is what we are trying to establish.
No.
You don't recall that happening?
No.
Because in many of the
It
ghettos...
was shouting only if, you know, some tried to get out. I know the stories of the ghettos in Poland, but that wasn't. Ours was kind of like a ma'avar, just
A transit.
a transit, yes.
Yes. All right, well, let's move on to the next stage in the war, when you left finally the ghetto, the confined, closed ghetto. What happened then? Were you still all together as a family? Your parents were still
Until
alive?
we were taken off from this terrible train.
Well, let's get to the train. How did you get to the train?
After the train, they collected us one day. We are leaving.
You were forced out.
Yes, and on this terrible, like herrings, very
Cramped.
cramped in the train. And I don't even remember if it was 2 days or 4 days. How long it took on the train to get to Auschwitz.
Who were those who
It's
forced you
terrible.
out of the ghetto and onto the train? Were they Hungarians?
Hungarians.
Not Germans.
No Germans. Until we got on the train, I think, the Germans took over in a certain, must have been in a certain part as the train went on. Traveled. I think in a certain part the Germans took over and the Hungarians went back.
Where
Must have been.
Where
because they-
did you think you were being taken to? Or where were you told you were being taken to?
to a better place than in the ghetto.
What did you
It
think?
was
Do you
more
remember?
spacious. No, only the unknown, the fear. Fear was terrible. That was great fear. Where and what will happen? And putting in money in the shoes and putting money in the coat and putting in things away, hiding, sewing in things that I remember very much. And in case they'll separate us, So the parents told us how to behave and what to do, and all this was very, we were very aware that it won't be good.
Had you
Just
any?
the hope we'll meet one day, and we'll, if they separate us, to hold on, and one day we'll.
Yes. Had you any knowledge at this stage, which was early 1944, of the fate of European Jewry?
We knew, we knew because from Czechoslovakia how they're taking the Jews. Oh, we knew all around us that the Jews are taken. You know, all the other places.
Information had got back
yes.
to you.
Oh yes, yes. But where? I don't.
You didn't know.
No.
What happened? Okay, so what happened after that? When the train finally, after 2 or 4 days, came to its destination.
It was weird all the time. As we got out, the shock, of course, was great because straight away shouting and screaming, and of course there were some dead on the train in our cabin, and the smell was terrible, you know, after those days. And, oh, I can't describe that. It was terrible. It's like really like cattle, like not people in the train.
Yes.
But when we got out, they straight away shouted men separately, and to leave the luggage. It will be taken, it will be picked up, not to worry. They behaved very nice, properly, yes. Not to worry about the luggage. The luggage will be brought to the place where we are going to. So, but men separate from the women, and they separated me from my mother because I went with my mother, and I was running back to my mother, and again they took me to another row, and I remember how I smuggled back into between the tall people and just went back to my mother.
Did you know where you were?
No,
What did you see?
just the train, and just as we landed, and there was Bama,
A
a
platform.
man just on a platform, just above us, and just looking exactly what's going on. And the others actually were people in stripes with band on their arm. They were doing the work. They were shouting at us, and not shouting, they were just go here, go there.
Ordering.
Ordering. And the Germans were shouting, los, schnell, come on, you know. What you hear and see, and you know, they were shouting what to do. And only when I came back the third time to my mother, she had a baby in her hands, and I couldn't understand. So I only saw her, you know, with the baby and my little brother and sister next to her. She was holding them and the baby, and then a man came down to me, which I realized later that it was Mengele, and he took me, my 2 shoulders, you know, like that, and said, ach Mädel, Mädel, wenn du wusstest. No, ich hätte schon mal gekannt, ich habe gewusst, was meint, you know. And he pushed me back.
Away from your mother.
My mother. And so then was everybody, you know, was by myself, but with everybody else there, was whomever they picked, mothers and children, was one line, and man on the other side, and my brother was still too small, and he didn't go actually with man. I mean, he went with my mother. He was just his bar mitzvah.
And your sister went with your mother too?
Another 2, yes.
And you went separately?
Yes. I went just.
And what do you remember of the camp? In
Well,
some...
then they took us to the shower, and but with a difference. So the shower was a difference. That means there we really showered, and we really got clothed, and they shaved our hair, and completely shaven, showered, clothed. And I remember that, after I was shaven, I found that it was then they used to use for menstruation it was like a turban I made. I took out the wear and I made a turban for myself and put it on, and they let me have that, I remember. And then they took us to the camp. After we were ready, they took us to the camp, and we didn't know about parents, anything. And in the camp, in the barrack, it was with a group of people, and I didn't know anybody. Some were from my place, some girls, and some from all over. It wasn't just my place was brought in then, that time, that only from my ghetto, from Slatina ghetto. There were many more, lots of